And we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Game Source, of course, everything that we do right here at the Lakers Fast Break. We truly appreciate you watching and listening. Plus, you can go ahead and check out what we do each and every time out right here on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe today and be part of all the fun right here at, of course, the Lakers Fast Break. Subscribe on YouTube today. And also, if you can, like, share, subscribe, follow, or do whatever it is that you can to support us right here at the Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Simblades with a Y.com. You want your lawn transformed into something much more better than it is today. Plus also as well, LakersBall.com, Lakerholics.com, and of course our good friends at the Hoopheads Podcast Network. And if you could support all of that, it is sincerely appreciated. Well, the bell has now rung. Class is in session. We are back for Lakers Fast Break University. Truly appreciate you attending class today. And in today's lecture, we will be discussing one of the most consequential acquisitions of all time. And that is the Kobe Bryant-Vlade Divac trade. Well, actually, it was for a pick, which became Kobe Bryant. And this has been so much talked about over the years. It has changed the course for the Lakers organization for years to come, is what it did. And it's just been so much important as far as what it did for us, but also what it did for basketball as a whole, and what, of course, came out of it with the Lakers becoming a dominant force in the NBA, and of course Kobe Bryant becoming one of the greatest players of all time. Vlade Divac was a much beloved individual that was part of many of the wonderful teams in the 90s, but Vlade Divac unfortunately was a valued commodity by other teams that wanted a center, and Charlotte was one of them. So we're going to discuss the Vlade Divac Kobe Bryant trade and how monumental and impactful it was. And here today to go ahead and talk in today's lecture, it's a good man indeed. You got to go ahead and check out what he's doing today as Ox1947, of course, at LakersBall.com. It is Professor Joe Soro. And Professor, great to have you here, my friend. Of course, we're all right there as far as the class is concerned. We're all gathered up. All the desks are moved up. The seating arrangements are all done. Everybody's very, and just greatly anticipating today's lecture on the Vlade Divac Kobe Bryant trade and how much of a part of the Lakers lore it truly is.
So, what coincides this particular time is, would Advent be the right word in explaining the internet? Mm-hmm. This incident with the Lakers, Vlade, Kobe, was right at the time where the internet was starting to take off. And I was glued to the internet. This was like the first thing I was trying to find information on what was going on with Vlade, with the draft. There was some noise. It was more towards kind of Shaq, which is, most of it. But there was this noise that this Kobe Bryant thing was going on. It wasn't until later that it got more and more detail, especially with the, Charlotte and the Lakers obviously get most of the pub, but there was this one guy that, and this was at the beginning here, you could tell that he was, I think had he gotten full, this is my theory, had he gotten full support on this, Kobe Bryant would have never been close to the 13th pick. The 13th pick would have been 5 slots too late, and I believe the New Jersey Nets had the 8th pick. There was a lot of discussions that John Calipari wanted Kobe Bryant. And boy, would that have changed things. NBA TV had a segment show, which I wish they would do more of this. I thought it was a fantastic show. It was called What If? And one of the What Ifs shows was, what happens if Kobe Bryant goes to New Jersey? Now, at the time, Kobe Bryant had said that he would go back to college if he didn't go to LA. It wasn't until later, and I found out on What If, on that program on NBA TV, that it was more of a rouge. He said he would have gone anywhere. He could have been fibbing a little bit, or maybe he could have been serious. It would have made more sense. And imagine Kobe going to New Jersey. I mean, it's not that far away from his adopted hometown, right? Philly. Could you imagine New Jersey with Kobe Bryant? Woo-wee. But I digress. We're going to go back to what we're here for. We're going to go back to the lesson. Vlade Divac for Kobe Bryant and what it did for the LA Lakers.
Well, before we go into that, my friend, I want to go ahead and discuss a little bit about Vlade Divac, who was at the time my favorite Lakers player, someone who did a lot of things well, didn't excel, unfortunately, at anything as I hoped he would. It showed a lot of promise as a Lakers first-round draft pick and could do a lot of things. Rebound, he could block shots, he could handle the ball, he could pass, and he could shoot from the outside. I think he was a forerunner for the type of individual bigs that we see now, the type of individual bigs that we see in the NBA that, the stretch fives and whatnot. He could do so many great things. And I feel like when it comes to Vlade Divac, I feel like he could have done more and he should have been more as a player than what he was.
That's an interesting assessment. Vlade was ahead of his time in terms of his skill set, but the way the game was being played in the 90s, the physicality, that's likely what kept him from becoming, let's say, a skinnier Arvydas Sabonis, a man who could score, who could pass from the post, who was ridiculously smart. I mean, his basketball IQ was amazing. Even as a rookie, I remember there were games where you're just watching him run the offense. Imagine this guy doesn't know English that well, and you got all these guys that are from different cultures and a different world, and you would watch Vlade and how he would pivot and how he would get to the post, how he would get out, how he would pass. His fundamentals were phenomenal.
Yes.
And the talent that the Lakers had in the mid-90s, if you needed to know how good Vlade was, the fact that we were able to win some amazing series during that time or get close to beating, we almost beat the Suns in 93, the year they went to the finals. We were up 2-0. And Game 5, if you go back to that game, we should have won that game at home. I'm sorry, Game 4, not Game 5. We should have won that game. I'm not going to get into the details of that again because we're here to talk Vlade and Kobe. But Vlade could have been a starting center on a title team in LA if he had the right supporting cast. Agreed. Now, go ahead. As far as Vlade, Nick Van Exel at the time, Eddie Jones, Seth Sabalas, these were all really, really nice players, but they were not what I would consider elite players. Van Exel might have been able to get to an elite status, but his focus was not always there. He had a lot of anger. He had a lot of just distractions in terms of being that elite player. Eddie Jones, fantastic on D, 20-point scorer, but wasn't really like a guy that's going to be able to take over a game. Eldon Campbell was a player that always was supposed to be better than what he ended up being. And that's really what that team was. But they played hard. They played well. And Del Harris, pushed the right buttons on that particular team. And Vlade Divac, had he played, I'd say in the early 2010s and until now, I wouldn't be. I mean, is Vlade an all Hall of Famer based off his international stuff? Is he a Hall of Famer?
Well, he was voted as a Hall of Famer. I'm not
Okay,
sure you could.
so he's a Hall of Famer, right?
Yes.
But it's not so much. See, I separate the NBA versus the international thing. I know they have only one true Hall of
Well,
Fame,
it's the basketball Hall of
right?
Fame.
But for me, he's not a Hall of Famer. He's not an NBA Hall of Famer. That's kind of where I sit there. He might have been in this era. He might have been in this era because they do play a softer game, and his skill set would have been wow. It would have been dynamite. It would have been. I mean, he might have been Jokic, a skinnier Jokic at this point, right? So Vlade loved being a Laker, and we loved him.
Yes.
We loved Vlade. I love Vlade till this day. Even when he was in Sacramento flopping all over the place, I still loved him.
Hey, you know what? Even as a Sacramento King, he provided the Lakers, some great help.
One of the greatest assists of all time.
Exactly.
No doubt. Vlade helped bridge so many things for LA. He bridged the Magic era, even playing with Magic, to the Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe era. He helped create a pretty amazing rivalry that first 3 years in 2000 with him being with the Kings.
And where he's from in the world, you created a new fan base for the Lakers.
Yes, it became, the Serbian nationals are a big Laker contingency. And that when you can take over a country, that's a pretty good thing. So yeah, Vlade, before we get to the details of the trade, Vlade was, to me, he was a Laker, and even more so than a King, obviously more so than a Hornet. He'll always be a Laker in the end. The only tragedy is he never got a chance to win a title with them, and I know he so desperately would have loved to do that, and we all do. But that 8-day window, we'll get into that in a second here. That 8-day window doesn't happen. That 8-day Jerry West master class, talk about master classes, master class of acquisitions and talent evaluating is, in my book, the greatest in all of NBA history.
Once again, it's the Lakers Fast Break. Classes in session right here at Lakers History 101. We're discussing, as part of the lecture today, of course, the Kobe Bryant, Vlade Divac trade that, again, changed the course of so many things for the Los Angeles Lakers. And here today to also discuss and share his point of view as part of today's lecture, good man indeed. He is out of Toronto traffic. He has actually joined us right now. It is Professor MagicMan Sean Grice. And Professor, great to have you here. When you discuss the trade of Vlade Divac and Kobe Bryant, of course, or actually, I'm sorry, Vlade Divac and that first round pick, because it wasn't a guarantee that we were going to go ahead and select Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, no, it wasn't, Gerald. That was to me, it's the best, the greatest draft of all time. It produced 11 All-Stars. The 1984 draft produced 7. What was really weird about that whole draft was, the stories that came out later, John Calipari basically saying that Jerry West kind of Jedi mind tricked him into not selecting Kobe, and so he takes Kerry Kittles instead. And then you get to the actual trade itself, and Kobe is selected by the Hornets. But according to Kobe, according to his agent, the coach of the Hornets, Dave Cowens at the time, told them, look, we're looking to trade you because you're not going to get a lot of minutes with my team. I have Muggsy Bogues, I have Del Curry, I have Ricky Pierce, I have Glenn Rice, I have Malik Rose, I have a lot of talent in the backcourt and on the wing, and you're just not going to get a whole lot of playing time. So
he did get a chance, though, Kobe Bryant, to try out with other teams. And of course, the most famous being his tryout with the Celtics.
Yes,
There's a very real possibility he could have ended up in the Boston Green.
that's possible, Gerald. But ultimately, they selected Antoine Walker.
Mm-hmm.
Like they and at the time, the Boston Celtics said that they just felt that Antoine Walker had a better workout, and they felt that he was a better fit for what they were looking for. But you're right. They brought Kobe in for I believe second workout, because there was the talk that he could end up being a Celtic.
There's still that famous photo of him in a Celtics green.
Yes, of course, of course. I detest it. It's probably his worst basketball picture of all time. But he had to work out for them. He had to wear the colors. So be it. Yeah. So the trade goes down, and Kobe is put on the market, and who's the first guy to call up the Charlotte Hornets? Mr. Jerry West. Yeah. Okay, so you're looking at the Charlotte Hornets roster. They basically have Matt Geiger and Tom Chambers in their front court, and they're bereft of talent elsewhere. So they really desperately need a center for all the guards they have. So Jerry West knows this. So Jerry West doesn't care if he gives up a first-round pick and Vlade for Kobe, even though he's 17 and he's raw mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So really, any talent evaluator has to just believe in their balls to bones that this kid is special. And that's what Jerry West said. He said he saw Kobe and he saw special. And when you're a GM and you're looking at talent 365 days a year, when that word pops in your head, or the word transcendent, or the word generational, it puts the radar on even thicker. And so Jerry West wanted Kobe, got Kobe, and the rest is history.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, Joe, is when you look at that draft as a whole, when it comes to the thought of being able to select Kobe Bryant, it was not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, he was a high schooler, and he was very raw, still had a lot to work on in his game, but the promise and potential were there. But you look at the picks before then, before the Lakers got a chance to select Kobe Bryant, and you see the Allen Iversons, the Marcus Camby's, the Sharif Abdul-Rahims. Those were players that did contribute and contribute well. In case of Allen Iverson, a Hall of Fame career. Stephen Marbury, who at the time started out actually on a house of fire. He actually looked like he might become the best of this draft at one point in time. You got other players like Ray Allen. We all know how Ray Allen is as far as one of the best shooters of all time. Antoine Walker, like you said, who before he battled all the issues in his life, he was actually one of the best scorers in the league at one time. So you've got a lot of players there that had at least some inkling of familiarity, but there was always this tempting promise by every single one of those teams that could have looked at it, where they were tempted, but ultimately didn't pull the trigger on any of them.
So at the time, Kobe was going to be the second modern day. I say modern, not because Moses Malone can be considered modern, but like KG the year before was the first high school player, I think in 13 years, something like that. And the only guys that had come out from high school to the NBA were always big men. This was the first perimeter player to be coming from high school to the NBA. Mind you, Kobe probably weighed $180, $189, whatever it was. He was a skinny guy. So there's a clip of Phil Jackson pretty much putting massive shade on the fact that high school players were going to be drafted because he's like, they're just not mentally ready to be men, basically. So I always found that kind of interesting how that stuff always happens. That's why I always say there's a God or there's someone putting stuff together to put that together. I mean, this was probably, usually Phil plays a little coy on his, interviews. This was straight up, these guys don't belong here. So
he called them whale poop.
He had no respect for children, essentially, right? He wanted men, and that's always been Phil Jackson's thing. So, Kobe Bryant wasn't taken seriously. It was too early. Anyone and everyone will say the same thing. Oh, what happened here and what happened there? And no one knew anything. I remember that whole sequence vividly. I heard about Kobe Bryant being drafted. No one, not the Lakers, not anyone, thought anything of it other than, I guess the Lakers are they traded Vlade for Shaq. That makes sense. And with that draft pick, they picked this guy who we're going to see what happens to him. Why? And is it a risk? Not really. To me, a 13th pick really never really made a difference at that time. There were a few here and there, but really it was always going to be like a top 5 guy in the NBA. But the most important part was Shaq. We were able to open up the books so they can get Shaq. I was excited about Shaq. Kobe was like, well, if he works out, great. If not, we got Eddie Jones, and we have Van Exel in the backcourt. So there wasn't any kind of the genius of the Jerry West analyzation didn't really come out until obviously Kobe made the All-Star team his second season as a non-starter. And by the way, he got robbed of the Six-Man Award that year. They gave it to Danny Manning, and that still, in terms of basketball memory, still irritates the crap out of me. So what did it mean for the Hornets? They get their center, right? We're still in that center-centric culture of the NBA. Charlotte wasn't going to win a championship, but they sure were going to be competitive. As a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, the following year, they did win a playoff game against the Bulls where what's his name? God, what the little guard that they had, I completely blanked out. I remember.
Well, let me put it to you like this. I mean,
who was it?
We always look at it.
No, not Bugsy. The other one, the one that played with the
Del
Bulls.
Curry?
Bogue? You said Bogue. Muggsy
No,
Bogues,
the
yeah.
guard
Del
that
Curry?
played with the Bulls in the first repeat.
Oh,
Talking about B.J. Armstrong?
B.J. Armstrong.
Armstrong?
Yes. So that was their best team, the Hornets' best team.
Well, let me put it to you this way. After they made the trade, we always talk about what it's done for Kobe and what it did for the Lakers. When it comes to what it did for Charlotte, they had 2 50-win seasons once they got Vlade.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
They did. They did. What's kind of it's quite the anomaly. That franchise still hasn't won a division title. They did win 50 games, but they still couldn't win a division title because they were in a division with the Orlando Magic and they were in a division with the Miami Heat. And they weren't going to be better than those teams, no matter how hard they tried. So they did have a fair bit of success, Gerald. You're right about that. Vlade did stabilize their front court because their back court was really good. Again, Ricky Pierce wasn't the same guy he was in the mid-late 80s back then, but he was still a very good player off the bench that could spell Del Curry. You also had Malik Rose. You had a young Glenn Rice as well. So it was a formidable team. They just weren't at the same level as the Bulls.
That's correct. And they did end up in the 1997-98 year, end up losing in the conference semifinals to the Bulls rather handily. But still, again, we always talk about what, Kobe Bryant coming to LA did for the Lakers, did for the organization for years to come. But I just wanted to go ahead and mention, as part of today's lecture, that the addition of Vlade Divac, what it did for that team, at least in the short term. Then we obviously know what had happened. He got traded to Sacramento and it went from there. So I think that success followed Vlade around after he went from, of course, the Lakers to Charlotte and then to Sacramento. I don't think it's a coincidence, the fact that Vlade Divac, when he went on Charlotte and when he went on Sacramento, that they both started winning some real games and becoming a major force in the NBA.
Oh, absolutely. Again, that draft is very unique because in the same draft, Jerry West selects Derek Fisher
Mm-hmm.
from Little Rock, Arkansas,
Yes.
and Kobe and Fish end up forming a special bond on the basketball court because Kobe was the one who said that Derek Fisher was the one who took all the licks from him, but he just kept practicing and he just kept just pushing himself. And Kobe respected that, and they formed a very special bond. 5 championships together. Off that success alone, Jerry West produced 2 players that won a combined 10 championships. That's very special. There are maybe that's once in a lifetime draft for most GMs, but it seemed like Jerry West could pull that off, like a rabbit out of a hat. Just at any point in time, he was capable of striking with these kind of deals. And going forward, it forged a special bond. And Kobe understood at the time that, like Joe was saying, he knew how skinny he was. He knew that mentally he probably wasn't ready yet, but the guy was just thirsty. All he did was ask questions. And there, it's funny, Gerald, when you're apprentice and you're coming up in the world in whatever trade you're striving for, some people don't offer you help openly. You have to work for it. You have to earn their trust, and then they might bestow some wisdom on you. But Kobe kept asking questions, staying late. He did all the right things that you want a student to do. He became the perfect student, basically. This 17-year-old kid basically became the perfect student because he raised his hand in class. He took licks. He just came back. He comes early. He stays late. He gets his homework done. He gets straight A's. He's valedictorian, on and on and on and on. Like, it goes forward, but it's just it's remarkable what happened there. It truly is.
Once again, it is Lakers History 101. We're discussing the Vlade Divac to Charlotte. In return, the first round pick came back in 1996 for Kobe Bryant. Joe, I want to ask you this. This is a great question. One of our fabulous students, Blue Magic, raised his hand in class. And he wanted to ask a question. Sorry if I missed it, professors, but does anyone know? I put in the professors, by the way. Does anyone know if the Lakers wanted to trade Divac for someone or something other than Kobe? I have a feeling, the way the West says it, he was targeting Kobe. He was targeting that pick, and he had just a gut feeling that he would be available around then. So the way West phrased it, that was his singular goal. But I'm sure still he had some backups in case that Kobe Bryant would not fall down to number 13.
So they signed Shaquille O'Neal 8 days before the draft, but they still needed the money. something must have been agreed on before. And the other thing is, Jerry West was preparing in case Shaq wanted 140 million instead of, I believe, the 121.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to renounce Elton Campbell's
Yes.
deal or contract, I should say. So Jerry West had to trade Vlade to get Shaq. I believe Jerry didn't know until that workout with Michael Cooper that Kobe Bryant was going to be what he ended up being in that workout. So it was one of those things where, and this is why Jerry West, I think, had to go to the hospital or get medical attention after this whole process, is he was probably sitting there going, holy crap, we're going to get the number one player of this era and possibly the number one player potentially of the next era, all from one transaction. You trade Vlade, you've now cleared money to get Shaq officially. That trade then gets you the 13th pick, and you pick Kobe Bryant. I mean, it's too cliche to say that Jerry West was ahead of his time. Just saying he was a good talent evaluator was not, it doesn't do him any justice. This guy has a sixth sense for this business and this game that you just can't buy, train, or teach. And to top it off, on top of that, he drafts a Laker icon at 24 in Derek Fisher. I mean, 8 days. In 8 days, he brought the Lakers Shaq, Kobe, and Derek Fisher. That right there, that transaction, in my book, would have put him in the Hall of Fame.
13 rings. 13 rings with the Lakers combined.
I mean, come on. When you talk about Mr. Clutch, I know he lost to the Celtics 7 times, twice to the Knicks. But, and he was called Mr. Clutch during that time, but.
And they named an award after him.
What a fitting name for what really developed later. Because when he was just Jerry West, which is what he was for a short amount of time, a coach, but more of an executive, this is what you call clutch. This. He did stuff in the 80s too. We won't get into that now because we're talking about Vlade and Kobe. But this was like the coup de grace. Is that what they say? I don't know. Is that French?
Yeah, that's very good, Joe. Very good.
There you go. So I can't take credit for it. It was I remember when the Steelers sealed the AFC Championship game to go to Detroit to take Jerome Bettis to Detroit for the Super Bowl. That was what the play-by-play announcer said once Big Ben dove into the end zone on a quarterback run. Anyways, so Jerry West, in this month-long crusade to get the Lakers to the next step, to create the next dynasty, this, I don't think, still gets enough pub. It just doesn't get enough pub because no one in the NBA, except a little bit from John Calipari, which was the precursor to what John Calipari put his hat on in his time, which is he is the greatest amateur coach to essentially guide these guys into the NBA. He would go to these kids' houses, tell the parents, guys, these guys are going to come play with me. They're going to learn how to play the right way. I'm going to take care of them, but you're going to be rich in a year. And I'm going to make sure you're ready. Your son is ready to go to the NBA. I'm going to do my best to prepare them. Come on, and it makes sense. I know John Calipari has a personality not a lot of people like, and a lot of people that didn't like him, Bobby Knight, I'm sure to some degree, Krzyzewski,
Rick Pitino,
which is the irony of that is hilarious, by the way.
Yes,
the fact that
I
Rick
agree.
Pitino would not like somebody, right? You got those are the two things, guys. And I don't even look. Charlotte was getting a center. I don't think they gave two craps about the Kobe Bryant thing. They're like, hey, look, we're gonna get Vlade for a 13th pick for some high school kid. Yeah, whatever. Who cares? The other thing was the funny story around the Kobe thing is, and this recently came out, I think, on some of the documentaries. The Clippers had talked to Kobe and said, well, we're not going to be taken seriously if we're going to, draft a high school kid. The Clippers saying that, by the way. Okay. Good for you guys. You just cost yourself at least 4 or 5 titles, by the way. But, have your respect now. Go ahead and do your thing. So there was to answer Blue Magic's question, there was never any news in any way at that time, 10 years later, and now, that Vlade was going to go anywhere other than to Charlotte for that pick and to clear up cap room for Shaq. That's it. There was never any discussions. I think Jerry West got tunnel vision and said, this has to go the way it's going to go or we're effed. We lose Shaq. We lose Kobe. I die. Jerry West has a heart attack and dies in 1996 if this doesn't happen, because if you can't get rid of Vlade's salary, I don't know how that all kind of plays out. And then, of course, you lose Kobe Bryant to who? Who would draft Kobe Bryant after 13? Would be a great what if. That would be a great what if. Geez,
Phoenix is sitting there at 15, and they're guard heavy, so they decide they're going to take this small kid from Santa Clara named Steve Nash.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, because the Knicks were picking, I think they were picking 18 and 19 in that draft, and they picked John Wallace, which New York were dying to get, right? And at the time, I thought that was great. Syracuse kid. And then I believe they got Walter McCarty in the next pick from Kentucky.
And then Portland selects Jermaine O'Neal.
Okay, so imagine this.
Here it goes. Okay, after Kobe Bryant, Peja Stojakovic was picked
to the Kings. Yep.
Steve Nash was picked up by Phoenix.
Bryant, Stojakovic, Nash, all-star.
I looking at that draft and remembering the little details. Again, guys, SportsCenter was at its peak. SportsCenter in the 90s it was SNL in the 90s. SportsCenter in the 90s was what their prime was. It was the best sports station, best sports information ever in the history of its existence was in the 90s. So there was really, really good information coming out at that time, but not enough to say I know everything. But I do remember that Phoenix was very high on Steve Nash. Tony Delk would have went where he went, which was, I believe, the Charlotte Hornets at the time, right?
Yes,
correct.
That's correct.
Formerly the New Orleans Hornets, blah, 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 right?
He went 16th, and then right after that, Jermaine O'Neal.
Right, and then Jermaine O'Neal would have been picked. I really believe because New York didn't know who they were going to get. They picked John Wallace because I think whoever they wanted wasn't there. I believe if Kobe doesn't get drafted by Charlotte at 13, I really believe he's going to New York at either 18 or 19. Think about it for a second. Maybe they pick Wallace at 18 and Kobe at 19. Imagine Kobe Bryant in a Knicks uniform. Holy crap, we could have a whole show on that. And that's the exciting part. That and the New Jersey thing, really, like that what if show, I was glued onto TV. Because imagine, there would be no Brooklyn Nets right now. Kobe would be he would be the number one New York icon, even bigger than Frank Sinatra.
They would nickname a highway after him for sure.
It'd be the New Jersey Nets, 3, 4, 5-time champion New Jersey Nets.
But it'd be like the Kobe Turnpike.
And Kobe's stats would have been close to Jordan-esque because he would have been hit the pavement right off the bat. Kobe. The amazing part about Kobe's statistics is he really didn't play the first 3 years. Mind you, remember, he didn't play at all his rookie year, barely. Second year, he was a six-man. Third year, there was only a 50-game season that year. He didn't play his first full season, which he did get hurt that year, broke his wrist, which was actually a blessing in disguise because he broke his wrist and they signed B. Shaw. And B. Shaw was the Robert Horry of the 2000 season, or definitely in that Portland season series. So you're sitting there and you're looking at his stats. Yes, he did get what was more important is the fact that he was a 21, 22, and a 23-year-old three-peat world champ. That wouldn't have happened anywhere else, I think, at that time, that early. He sacrificed his stats, but got them later. But, again, I think winning in the end was more, more important.
Here's the trip about that draft. So Kobe's selected number 13. The win shares of the most win shares in their career. Kobe is number 1 from 96, 172.7 wins. 1984, the number 1 win share is Hakeem. Hakeem has 162.8. So Kobe's almost beating him by 10 wins there. A 13th pick, 17-year-old kid, and going up against a phenom. Like I said, I go back and forth with people all the time, but I really do believe the 96 draft is the greatest draft ever. And trivia time, because we'll take a little bit of a break. In the 96 draft, 5 players from that draft ended up playing for the Lakers. Name all 5.
So the 5 guys drafted in 96 all played for the Lakers.
Yeah, 5 guys from the 96 draft all played for the Lakers.
Wow. Okay, so Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, Derek Fisher.
Yep.
Who the hell else was there? It must have been late in the 20 picks. Go ahead. Give me the other 2.
So the other 2 are Samaki Walker.
Oh, yeah. He was picked by Dallas. And I think what was it?
And Travis Knight.
Travis Knight. That's right. I forgot about Travis Knight. They had 3 picks that year. Yes. Oh, that's sad. I can't believe I forgot that. Sorry. I was thinking about like a player that was coming in his twilight year to play with us. Yep. I totally forgot about that. Sorry. I guess I should.
Definitely Blue. 03 draft is up there too. I think those are the top 3. The Shaq draft, that's up there too. That's in a top 5. And then my top 5 draft list of all time would number 5 would probably be 1960. You had Oscar 1, Jerry West 2. That alone puts you in the top 5. But just going back to this draft again, sometimes you get lucky in life. Some guys get breaks where other guys don't. John Calipari selects, like Joe was saying, if he had selected Kobe Bryant, it would have been a different story, but he selects Kerry Kittles. And while Kittles doesn't make an all-star team, he had a pretty good rookie year. I don't think he made the first team. I want to say he made the second team off the top of my head, because that draft was just stacked. There was no way he was going to make the first all rookie team. So Calipari missed on that one, and he talks about that one a lot. He talks about how, if he had selected Kobe, he likely isn't shown the door because he's likely given another 2 to 3 years, and maybe Kobe develops faster, maybe he doesn't. We'll never know. But like Joe said, whether it's Calipari passing on him, and then the Hornets trading him? And then what if the Knicks had selected him? Because I remember the draft at the time. I wasn't as old. I wasn't as young as Gerald and Joe were at the time. I was younger than these gentlemen, but I do remember specifically, you know, the analyst saying, you know, if Kobe drops from Charlotte not taking him, he's likely going to the Knicks. I remember that too.
It's a really great what if game because of the circumstances at the time. The first perimeter high school to NBA player. This is something that needs to be said more. It wasn't just a simple, oh, this kid's coming from here. No, this was big. This was this was a game changer.
And Blue Magic is right. If Twitter was around back in '96, yeah, Jerry West would have gotten roasted. You're trading Vlade Divac for this kid you call a diamond in the rough.
No, they would have known. I think they would have known that they were trading Vlade because of Shaq, and this was kind of a secondary thing.
It all fell into place because because of the master stroke that was played out by Jerry West. You saw the fact that they did get, and he was able to sign Shaquille O'Neal. He was able to pull off the trade, Vlade Divac going to Charlotte for that first round pick, which ultimately turned out to be Kobe Bryant, with all those other teams passing on him. And which, again, it turns out he was the best player in that draft, and he was chosen 13th. Even Allen Iverson, who was at number 1, I think if Philadelphia had to do it all over again, I think they would have picked Kobe over Allen.
Yeah, I agree, Gerald. I agree. Even though how much influence AI has had not only on the court but off the court, I think just purely on skill, you'd have to take Kobe number 1. Overall, there's no question about it. Not only is his skill set impressive, his workout ethic is beyond reproach. It's basically unparalleled. The only really parallels are Michael Jordan. So when you talk about somebody's work ethic like that, he's going number 1. There's no debate. I'd have some debate at number 2. If you redid that one,
Who would you pick then if that's the case? Because obviously for me, Kobe would be number one. Is Allen Iverson? To me, I think Allen Iverson would still be the number 2.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Above Steve Nash?
Yes.
I would go now. Well, it would have been perfect. Well, here's a question, actually. Well, okay, so you're saying
I don't. Sorry, Joe.
Okay.
I honestly don't think that. If Nash goes to the Grizzlies, that's really wow. That's
so. Would
something.
You pick Iverson second, or would you pick Nash second?
I think.
If AI went 2, I think the Grizzlies would take Steve Nash number 3.
Yeah, Toronto would be it'd be like, oh my God, we want to get Nash, Canadian, all that stuff, but you can't pass up AI. He goes 2. There's no way. There's no way AI is not going 2.
Yes.
2-time
but
MVP?
Vancouver gets Nash.
2-time MVP, you sure?
Yeah.
Vancouver redraft. Everyone knows what's going on, and then the next pick would be interesting. Do you go Jermaine O'Neal or Ray Allen?
Yeah, you're Milwaukee, right?
Yeah. Well, it would be yeah.
Yeah, because you're Milwaukee, and then Minnesota's picking. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now you're starting to get to that. Holy crap! What are we doing now?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know what? If I was Milwaukee, I would take Marcus Camby.
Are you sure not Pedro Stojakovic?
Ooh.
Would you take Marcus Camby over Jermaine O'Neal and Ray Allen?
Early years of Stephon Marbury?
I still take Camby.
Okay, so you take Camby over O'Neal and Ray Allen. Okay,
yeah.
So Camby goes
The
Gabby
Bucks.
goes to Milwaukee, and then basically Ray Allen still goes to
Minnesota.
to Minnesota.
I would pick Allen over any of those guys. So.
Yeah, okay.
And then,
Yeah,
I would think hard on Peja.
It would be.
Peja and then early years of Stephon, because Stephon. Okay, let's put things in perspective here. Stephon, until Kobe started breaking out in the early 2000s, Stephon and AI were like similar to what we saw what we talked about last time with
Darren
Williams and Chris Paul.
Yeah.
Well, it's unfortunate that Starberry didn't want to make that work, because he and KG had chemistry, and you added Sam Cassell into the mix. That was a potent trio, and he just decided he needed more exposure and he wanted star power, and he asked his way out of there. It's an interesting scenario, right? Because Ray Allen ends up going to a place where he's not happy. He's not playing the way he wants to play. He's not as happy as he was at UConn, and he gets traded to Seattle, and it changes his career.
I will say this, though. It's been a great time talking to each and every one of you guys as part of our lecture here. Thank you to the class that has been here for video or audio. This is Lakers History 101 right here at the Lakers Fast Break. But before we head on out, guys, we've got less than 10 minutes left in class. Want to go ahead and make sure we elaborate on the ramifications and the legacy of what that trade did. Joe, I'm going to start with you first. What exactly do you have to say in regards to that? Because, again, we all know what titles they won with Kobe Bryant. We all know the player he became, but there's a certain legacy. There's a certain importance to the NBA and to Los Angeles Lakers when it comes to that trade.
I'm going to try to give you the perspective from myself and then obviously the league. Mm-hmm. I was around a lot of Chicago Bull fans in the 90s. Michael Jordan I was coming off the tail end of the Magic era. Magic was my favorite player, but I never really was old enough to really understand and embrace that 80s dynasty. I got the tail end of it, like 1990 and then on. In a billion years, I would have never thought that my team would have gotten their own Michael Jordan. Never. And no one would have ever guessed that. So looking at what that trade did, it gave me the ability to watch Michael Jordan for the Lakers. And that's just mind-boggling to me to this day. That's who Kobe was. He might have been a hair below Michael in terms of talent, just a hair. And I think that hair might have been bridged had he won in 04 and 08. We've talked about that. I believe so it would have, because a big part of why Michael's legacy is what it is because of his accomplishments on top of the talent. And unfortunately, Kobe had two duds that it's just, that's just life, guys. It's always going to keep him here with Jordan.
Well, Blue Magic brings up a great point. What if he did follow Phil Jackson if Kobe didn't get drafted with that 13th draft pick? Would have been interesting if Michael Jordan followed Phil Jackson to
I don't think Michael would have ever done that. Not. I think Michael, as much as we want to say, and he said that he could have played another year or two, that 98 Bulls team, and he, to be fair with Michael said, let us play until we lose. He wanted to go out. He wanted to lose. He goes, just let us play until we lose. But Reinsdorf didn't want to do that. He wanted to get ahead of the game a little bit. Probably got tired of all the drama. Sometimes that happens. Look at Dan Gilbert with all the LeBron stuff. At some point, a human being finally gets like, look, I want to come to work and enjoy my work. Yeah, we're winning championships. Yeah, I have Michael Jordan. But if I have to have an angioplasty after every season because of this, it's not worth it. That's one of the things I do like about Jerry Reinsdorf. He's a very practical guy. And I think at that point, everyone went the way they went because that's really if they got out a year earlier than they were ready to go. And sometimes that's a good thing. Getting out earlier, a little earlier than too late. Jordan's legacy was perfect. He didn't have to play anymore. His last shot in the NBA was a game-winning shot to three-peat for the second time. If he doesn't go to Washington, he might have had the perfect career start and everything. Like even with all the stuff he did, right? So I don't believe he would have come back to play in LA in '99 unless they paid him $50 million a year. Then maybe he might have considered it.
Well, before we head on out, Professor MagicMan, do you have any last thoughts on the implications of this trade and what it did for the Lakers and the organization before we head on out?
Oh, well, it changed Kobe Bryant's career, Gerald, because he thought he was going to be a Charlotte Hornet. And then they said, we don't want you. He's like, oh, you don't want me? Okay. So every time I'm playing you guys, it's just going to be just that little bit of extra motivation. Just to let you know what you traded away, what you could have had.
Plus, also the teams that passed on by the high schoolers.
He said he had a list. He said he had a list prepared.
Who did this? I'm sorry. Who said this?
In regards to what?
Who said that he had a list?
Kobe.
Why? Go ahead. Go finish up, and I'll tell you why. That's kind of.
Well, that's a lot of players.
Well, it wasn't really.
They always seem to, these motivated players do actually do that.
He remembered all the players who were picked ahead of him. He remembers all of them, Joe. That's what.
Okay, so this is the part where Kobe mimicked Michael a lot. I think they made stuff in their head up to motivate themselves. No one except Calipari and maybe a few people that we didn't really hear about really knew anything about Kobe Bryant being anything. No one knew. They knew he was raw. They knew he had talent. But I don't blame anyone. I don't blame anyone because guys, this Jerry West is who he is for a reason.
Yeah, and just to put a cherry on top of this at the end, Gerald, for the class, of all Jerry West's accomplishments, his personal accolades, his championships as a player, as an executive, the 96 draft is his crown jewel. That's the Rosetta Stone in Jerry West's career, that he got Shaq, then he drafted Derek Fisher, Travis Knight. He traded for Kobe Bean Bryant. He capped off an executive career. And those guys combined, I believe, if I'm counting all five of them, I believe that's well over 15 championships combined that Jerry West drafted and or traded for within those couple of weeks. It was just an outstanding series of events, like Joe was saying. And yeah, I do remember seeing a little cryon on the news that Jerry West was hospitalized. I can't remember what it was for exactly, but I do remember that. He must have been going through hell. I can't imagine maybe some of maybe the gallons of Pepto-Bismol he was drinking to try and control acid reflux for the decisions he was making here. But it's just an incredible achievement by Mr. West. And as a Laker fan, I'm just so thankful that in 1960 they decided to take him.
Absolutely, indeed. But once again, if you have any questions for the class or the instructors, Professor Joe Soro, Professor MagicMan, or the Dean of Lakers Fast Break University, class, if you have any questions, please go ahead and hit us up at Lakers Fast Break on Twitter, or right there on YouTube or Facebook, or of course, Lakers Fast Break at yahoo.com. Well, we truly appreciate you being part of today's history lesson. Guys, I want to go ahead and bring up as a next lecture, as a next subject on our next Lakers History 101, what could have been and what was with the 2012 Los Angeles Lakers. That was something that was brought up by TJ Johnson, and I want to go ahead through that whole mess. That's going to be something of great discussion. It's not going to be fun, but it's something that people need to understand what the promise was, the Sports Illustrated cover, the whole 9 yards. So definitely going to go ahead and touch on that. Joe, you seem irritated already. Any thoughts on that before we head on out?
I remember that summer telling my Laker fan friend, I said, bro, this is one of those games where we're watching. And again, we've watched every game, no matter what, DVR, whatever. But I told him, I go, this team, we're going to want to watch that game on December 28th when they're playing Milwaukee. I always picked on Milwaukee at the time because in Milwaukee, there were some games I'd watch, whether they were in Milwaukee or they're at Staples, where I'm like, are these guys awake? I'm barely awake watching these guys play. They're dead. Like, there's no feeling. It's like, oh, let's just get this game over with. They'd always win it, so it was okay. But boy, did we get slapped, double slapped in the face.
That we did. That whole team, the promise that it had, unfortunately, it's a story in and of itself, and we'll cover that in our next. And we'll cover that on our next.
That's funny, Blue Match.
We'll cover that on our next Lakers History 101. Blue Magic, Sovereign, you've been sensational. Everyone as well. Joshua Dietz, he's been great as well. Of course, our super fan on Facebook. Truly appreciate all of our students attending today's class, both watching and listening. But we'll be back tomorrow for the live watch party against the Nuggets. And of course, after that, it's the post game, of course, right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. Class is now dismissed.